Welcome to a series where we talk about the World Cup histories of each nation of the 2026 World Cup. Today we'll be talking about a team that knocked out Italy to make it to the World Cup for just the second time, despite never having made the Euro in their history. Bosnia and Herzegovina may not have much of a history as an independent national team, but you might be surprised at how consistently solid they've been in World Cup qualifying despite the relative obscurity of the team. We'll go through that history today and celebrate the most recent example of Italy embarrassing themselves against a team with a fraction of the resources in history. Our history here begins with qualifying for France 1998, because before this, Bosnia and Herzegovina was a part of Yugoslavia. They were just starting to get their shit together as a sovereign nation when qualifying for France 1998 rolled around, putting them in a group with Denmark, Greece, Croatia, and Slovenia. This first campaign wasn't really anything too crazy. Being their first qualifying attempt, they were always bound to struggle. They got 3 wins and lost their other 5, sweeping Slovenia and finishing in 4th place in the group. Considering they were drawn into this group out of Pot 5, they technically exceeded expectations, giving Denmark their only loss of this qualifying campaign to add a cherry on top. For Korea-Japan 2002, Bosnia would be put into a group with Spain, Austria, Israel, and Liechtenstein, and this campaign went similarly. They got 2 wins against the Blue Reds of Liechtenstein and got home draws against Israel and Austria, but once again finished in 4th place, nowhere near the World Cup. Germany 2006 qualification saw Bosnia once again in Pot 4 in a group with Spain, Belgium, Serbia and Montenegro, who were still one country, and then Lithuania and San Marino. Home draws with Spain and Serbia were cute, but you would be forgiven for dismissing Bosnia after losing 4-1 in Brussels to a pretty poor Belgium team. They beat San Marino, but then got a draw in Spain, and that gave them some confidence. They beat Belgium in the home leg, got a win in Vilnius, beat San Marino again, and this was a great run to give them some confidence in the national team moving forward, but a loss to Serbia and Montenegro in the final match day settled them in 3rd place. An improvement in their best qualifying run yet, but not good enough for a spot in the playoffs still. Next we have South Africa 2010 qualifying, and once again Bosnia would be put into a group with Spain for the 3rd straight World Cup campaign, and this was more painful than the previous 2 because this Spain team had just won the Euro, would win it again in 2012, and would also go on to win the World Cup in 2010. Besides Spain, this group had Turkey coming off a good Euro run, Belgium for the 2nd straight time, and then Armenia and Estonia as well. Despite this bad draw, this group went shockingly well. Spain won 10 of 10, of course, but Bosnia shook off a tough start that included losses in Murcia and Istanbul in their first 3 games. They ended up winning 5 of their next 6, only a draw against Turkey at home to break that up, and they got 2nd place in the group shockingly easily. This got little old Bosnia to the UEFA playoffs for the very first time. Unfortunately, they would be matched up with CR7 in Portugal, and this was a tough draw when they could have gotten France, Greece, or Russia instead. They held their own in the first leg in Lisbon, only losing 1-0 to a first-half Bruno Alves goal and keeping themselves in it going into their home leg, but they laid a dud in Zenica, losing 1-0 again and falling just short of their first World Cup appearance despite having one of the best strikers in the world, a young Edin Dzeko. It's Brazil 2014, Dzeko is entering his prime, and Bosnia got their most manageable group draw yet out of Pot 3. They got Greece, Slovakia, both good teams that made it to South Africa, but what? And then the Baltic countries of Lithuania and Latvia, as well as Liechtenstein? Bosnia had to have been feeling good about this one. They drew in Athens, lost at home against Slovakia, but won their other 8 games, including crucially beating Greece at home in Zenica. This put both Bosnia and Greece on 25 points, but with goal difference favoring the Dragons, our boys Bosnia and Herzegovina were going to the World Cup for the first time in their history out of nowhere. I remember being shook that Bosnia was one of the teams going to Brazil out of Europe when teams like Denmark, Sweden, Serbia, Poland, and Turkey all missed. This was a decent team, don't get me wrong, but they were still one of the weakest teams going to the tournament out of UEFA. Of course, Edin Dzeko was still one of the best strikers in the world, and there were other solid players on this team, but people always forget about Miralem Pjanic. This dude was a baller in the midfield, and he was the real X factor for this Bosnia team to get into the knockouts. They got a decent draw to do it, being unfortunate enough to get Argentina and Lionel Messi out of Pot 1, but also getting Nigeria out of Africa and Iran out of the Middle East. 2nd place was more than attainable here. This must have been such a wild time to be a Bosnia and Herzegovina national team supporter. Your team has never played in the Euros. You're always been a Pot 3 or Pot 4 team for European qualifiers, putting you in the high 20s or 30s as far as European rankings. And now just a few years later, and you're opening your maiden World Cup voyage against Messi and Aguero and the Argentina national team, and you're doing it at the Maracanã. That is unreal. Of course, that dream immediately turned into a nightmare when Messi put a ball into the box and it bounced off the leg of a young Sad Kolasinac for a third-minute Bosnian own goal and a 1-0 Argentine lead. The Golden Lilies would have a few opportunities before halftime, but Argentina held their 1-0 lead and doubled it in the second half when Messi beat Asmir Begovic on a great shot and a great play. This game wasn't all bad because in the 85th minute, Senad Lulic played a pass past the defense and found their other good striker, Vihad Ibisevic, who would beat Sergio Romero to get Bosnia back into the game. They didn't end up winning. The game finished at 2-1, but this was still not a bad opener for a team that still had knockout hopes even after this game. Then Game 2 kicked off against Nigeria and Cuiabá, and oh my god. Bosnia scored early when Pjanic found Dzeko on a good pass, and Dzeko beat Vincent and Yama, but the goal was called offsides, and the ref was just wrong here. This was a good goal, and unfortunately Bosnia went down later in the half when Emmanuel Emenike ganked Emir Spahic, and then found Peter Onamwingi for the opening goal. Begovic had a good game in goal to keep Nigeria off the scoreboard any further, but Bosnia didn't mount any real charges until the very end. Dzeko was there to bring it down on the box, and his finish was good, but Enyama was better here. Bosnia was denied at the death and fell 1-0 and was actually eliminated from the World Cup with this loss. I won't speak for anyone else, but I had this team as dark horses to get out of this group, and for this to be their fate, I gotta feel for them here. Of course, you did have one last game in Salvador where Bosnia had a chance to get third place still with a win against Iran, who was playing for a knockout spot still. Finally, in this game, Bosnia showed up and looked like the better team, with Dzeko opening the scoring with a great strike from outside the box. Pjanic got his goal in the second half as well, and even though Iran got one back in the 82nd minute, Avdija Versajevic immediately answered and secured Bosnia's first ever World Cup win. They would win 3-1, nab third place in the group, knock out Iran, and end their debut tournament on a high at least. Bosnia would attempt to build on this going into Russia 2018 and would be drawn in a group with Belgium, Greece, Estonia, Cyprus, and Gibraltar. This group had 3 teams that were in Brazil and yet felt like a pretty weak group. Unfortunately, Bosnia got killed in Brussels 4-0 in the second game, but they got a road draw in Greece to remain in the hunt for second. After drawing 0-0 in the home game against Greece, though, Bosnia would lose in Nicosia to Cyprus, and this was a bad result. They played a fun game against Belgium, but lost that one 4-3, and ended up finishing third place in the group, just 2 points behind Greece for the playoff spot. It was probably inevitable, but Bosnia and Herzegovina would not be in Russia to make their repeat appearance. Now we get to Qatar 2022, and this is where it feels like Bosnia is in a dark age. Pjanic is no longer one of the best midfielders in Europe, Dzeko is beginning to show his age as well, and the team is being drawn out of pot 4 again. They got the holders France, as well as Ukraine, Finland, and Kazakhstan, and that is a tough qualifying group. This did not go well for Bosnia, who won a single game in this campaign against Kazakhstan, drew 4 games, and lost 3. This was a shit show of a group where everyone was fighting for second place behind the French, but it was Ukraine who ended up taking that playoff spot, and Bosnia was left in 4th place. Nowhere near the 2022 World Cup as Pjanic hung up his boots and Dzeko entered his late 30s. Now it's North America 2026, the whole reason why we're here, and we may have just watched a Bosnian rebirth right in front of our eyes. Like you see, this national team was nowhere going into its World Cup cycle, but look at how much can change in 4 years. To start, Bosnia got a good draw for qualifying, getting Austria out of pot 1, Romania out of pot 2, and then Cyprus and San Marino. And at the very least, they had to feel good about their chances of making the playoffs, which who knows what happens from there. Things started amazingly, though, with a 1-0 Bosnian win in Bucharest against theoretically their biggest competition for that playoff spot. A 4-game winning run to start the campaign actually had Bosnia thinking about winning the group, even though those thoughts would be put on hold after a 2-1 loss at home against Austria in the next game. That result was followed by an even worse one, a blown 2-0 lead for a 2-2 draw in Cyprus. Luckily for Bosnia, the Romanians would do them a favor, somehow beating Austria at home and then losing in Zenica 3-1 to Bosnia, bouncing them right back to within 2 points of Austria with just one head-to-head game remaining. If Bosnia could win in Vienna, they would go through as group winners and punch an automatic ticket to the World Cup. Haris Tabakovic would give them an early 1-0 lead that would hold for most of the game until his 77th minute Michael Grigoric equalizer for the Austrians. Bosnia was unable to find a winner, Austria was through to their first World Cup since the 90s, and the Balkan nation would have to qualify through the playoffs instead. Bosnia's knockout bracket was decided and they beat up against Wales, the other Dragons from the British Isles, and the winner would have to play up against Big Bad Italy. The Welsh and Bosnians provided a good contrast to each other. Wales is a fun attacking force that has moved on from their old talisman Gareth Bale and is now centered around dudes like Nico Williams and Harry Wilson and Ethan Ampadu. Bosnia still has Edin Dzeko, who is now over 40 years old, and their new generation is mostly unproven younger guys, with the poster child being the 18-year-old Karim Alibegovic. In contrast to Wales' free up-tempo style, Bosnia is more conservative and measured in the way they play. I saw the two teams as pretty even, but despite the game being held in Cardiff, I actually thought Bosnia would pull it off the win here, and I was in the minority there. This led to a game that I really enjoyed watching, at least in the second half. The first half was kind of dead, but Wales took the lead soon after the break on an amazing goal from Daniel James, and now had to switch onto defense mode and hold out the Bosnians. After James damn near made it 2-0 but got denied by the bar, Bosnia damn near equalized on a header from Benjamin Tahirovic, but he got denied by a great save from Karl Darlow. Ermedin Demirovic blew multiple golden opportunities. It was looking more and more like Bosnia was going to go out quietly, especially with more and more Welsh counterattacks leading to opportunities. It was at this time that Alibegovic would send a corner into the box, Darlow couldn't get to it, and Edin Dzeko, the 40-year-old legend, got a header into the back of the net for the late equalizer. Of course, there was still work to do, and with the game going to extra time back tied, that included keeping the Welsh out of goal. The British Dragons took the initiative during most of this extra time and had multiple opportunities to win it, but they couldn't. The Balkan Dragons held them out, and we were headed to a penalty shootout. Watching this in Ireland-Czechia shootout at the exact same time was fucking wild. Karl Darlow began the shootout with a huge save on the attempt from Demirovic, and Harry Wilson gave Wales the lead after round 1. Both takers hit the second attempt, with Haris Tabakovic's take really settling the nerves of the Bosnian players. Ivan Besic hit attempt number 3, barely getting it past Darlow, and after Brennan Johnson skied it over the bar, the shootout was tied again. Amir Hadžimetović hit his attempt. Bosnian keeper Nikola Vasil got his first save of the shootout on the attempt from Nico Williams, and this penalty shootout had completely turned around. Bosnia was on the brink of going through, just needing one more successful penalty, and up stood the 18-year-old Karim Alibegovic. The teenager stepped up, sent Darlow the wrong way, and Wales was out. Bosnia was on to the knockout finals, and the stakes couldn't be higher. They were playing in Zenica against Italy, with a World Cup bid on the line. This is a classic David versus Goliath battle. Italy has won the World Cup 4 times. Bosnia has only made it once. Italy won the 2020 Euro just 5 years ago. Bosnia has never qualified for a Euro at all. Up in the ante even further is the fact that Italy missed in both 2018 and 2022, and in the latter case they lost to a former Yugoslav team that was a relative minnow in the sport, North Macedonia. The Azzurri were not looking for a repeat here, and even though the game was in Bosnia, I and many others expected Italy to take this one home. That being said, I still had some cautious optimism for Bosnia to do the funniest thing ever, and that optimism quickly took a hit in the 14th minute. Vasil made a huge mistake trying to play from the back and gave it right away to Nicolo Barella, who immediately found Moise Kean for the easily 1-0 lead. I thought this was the end. All my attention went to the other games at this point. Bosnia searched for an equalizer as the first half went. They had a few good chances, but then the best thing that could have possibly happened for the Bosnians happened. Amar Memic had the chance to get behind the defense. Alessandro Bastoni was the last line of defense, and he brought Memic down from behind. It was an obvious straight red card. It was the dumbest thing he could have done, and it put Italy on the back foot for the rest of the game. As the second half went on, the best chance actually came to Moise Kean, who really should have made it 2-0, and probably now regrets that he didn't. The Bosnians grew in confidence as the half went on, and Italian keeper Gianluigi Donnarumma started getting called on more and more to save the lead. But Donnarumma could not prevent the shit show of an equalizer that Bosnia got in the 79th minute on a goal that was credited to Haris Tabakovic. Donnarumma continued to hold out after this, getting Italy to set extra time somehow. This was a mammoth effort from that man. In the added 30 minutes, the pressure was actually more on Vasil than Donnarumma, but both keepers held out during an action-packed extra time to send this to this second straight penalty shootout for Bosnia. Tahirovic hit the first pen, and then the horror show started for the Italians. Pio Esposito, one of their young guys, blasted it over the bar. Then after 2 makes in the second round, Alibegovic converted it in the third round, and Brian Cristante hit the bar. After Esmir Bayraktarovic barely got his pen past Donnarumma, that was it. Italy had choked away penalties, and Bosnia had won. They were through to the World Cup after 2 penalty shootout wins. Extremely dramatic, and I'm not going to make this about Italy. This was a shocking result for them. But Bosnia has some legitimate talent, and I'm happy to see the Balkans represented at this World Cup outside of Croatia. The group they enter is super winnable too, so that's got to be even more appetizing for this Bosnian fans that must feel like they're in complete dreamland. They get the hosts Canada, a good team, but one that has literally never won a game at the World Cup or even drawn one. The group they enter is super winnable too, so that's got to be even more appetizing for these Bosnian fans that must feel like they're in complete dreamland. They get the hosts Canada, a good team, but one that has literally never won a game at the World Cup or even drawn one. Switzerland is a good solid team that's always here but is never seen as a true contender, and that hasn't changed this year. And then Qatar are about as overlooked as a team that can be, that just won their continent 2 tournaments in a row. It wouldn't surprise me to see Bosnia win second or even first place in this group. That's video number 7 of 48, one that I did not expect to be making coming into this series. But damn, sometimes miracles do happen. I'm really excited to see what happens in this World Cup for Bosnia, but for tomorrow's video, we're going to take a look backwards at 2022. We're going to look at the host of that tournament and the one team left in Group B, the Qatar national team, and look at their history of near misses and flops, as well as 2 of the most surprising continental runs of all time.